In this video, I'm going to go through how to perform pay-per-click search term analysis. So before we can do this, we need to figure out what is the search term report. So this report is a report in the advertising campaign manager console. You can generate it over a period of time and you run it. It should run your search terms for all the ad groups and campaigns you're running. So to explain this a bit further, you would generally have a campaign structure or different match types such as auto, broad, phrase, exact, and product targeting. And then from there, when you generate one of these reports, you will probably get search terms by ad group. So you can have similar search terms in multiple rows of data, on which you will then need to aggregate those search terms, because you want basically every row to just represent the one search term. From there, after you aggregate all the data, you'll get a spreadsheet that will look like similar to this. This in particular is from Scale Insights. However, you get the exact same information in terms of the KPIs, impressions, clicks, orders, units. You got your sales and spend in here, and then you have your calculated KPIs. I believe they only show CTR, CPC, COS, and ROAS, in which this one here does show conversion rate, but generally you have all the data here to be able to perform search term analysis. So then taking a look at this, so there's a lot of data here. It's aggregated at the search term level, so there's no repeated search terms here, and all the data is recalculated. The calculated KPIs based off of the raw data, and they're all combined together over a period of time. So then from here, it really comes down to three strategies. So PPC in general, in my opinion, is not that difficult. It can really be boiled down to a couple actions and levers. The hard part about PPC though is the vast amount of data that you have to work with at not only at every ad group or at every product level, but at the search term level, targeting level, campaign level, etc., etc. So it can get pretty massive pretty quick. So generally, what I would always recommend when doing this kind of analysis is to try to automate as much as you can. However, if you are going to do this manually, there's things that you can do, and it will fall into these three buckets. So you have targeting strategies, you have bidding strategies, and then you have throttling strategies. So these rules are pretty straightforward. So let's just focus on targeting right now. So when you're targeting, these are the rules that I can apply. These are general best practices for PPC. I run search term isolation. So that's the concept of graduating targets that have performed well in the past, and you're trying to find and farm more long tail targets that are similar to the originating target. So that involves applying negatives on your auto, your broad, your phrase, and then graduating that exact target in your broad, your phrase, and your exact. So what you effectively do is you isolate that search term, and all the data then sits at that one search term. And then the other targeting strategy is negative targeting. So you basically, it's a target that's not relevant to you, you didn't convert on it, and you just want to fix it out from seeing any more of those targets come up or search terms come up. So it's pretty straightforward. You can come up with your own rules. But generally, I personally like to use the raw KPIs. So I will only use clicks, impressions, and orders. So in this case, for search term isolation, I will say it has to hit X amount plus orders before I do any graduation or do any negatives. So this X can really depend on what you feel comfortable with. My go-to is generally 2 or maybe 3, depending on the product and conversion rate of that product. But that's kind of my sweet spot there. When it comes to negatives, it's the same concept, but it's X amount of clicks with 0 orders. So whatever you feel confident with or comfortable with here. Again, it depends on your conversion rate, your product, your situation, in what this X is. Standard across the board, generally people set this to 12, 15, or roughly around that area. I would really put some thought into what you really want to set this to. And then this one's pretty straightforward. You're going to apply negatives to targets that don't perform well or haven't performed at all. So what you've done is you are gold panning for more, doing search term isolation, and then you're taking out targets that don't perform at all. The next one is bidding strategies. So bidding strategies, I do two types of rules. Again, these are standard across the industry. So I use a concept called inch-up bidding. Basically, the idea is to find the bottom of a target because I don't have a lot of confidence there, so I don't want to spend a lot of money there. So if I have low data, I'm going to generally bid pretty low, and I need to try to find that lowest suggested bid or that lowest bid that would drive a click. So if I have low data, then I'm going to increase the bid slowly. So you can think about like 5 cents, 2 cents, 5%, whatever. As long as the goal is you're trying to find that bottom bid. And then I move over to a revenue-based bidding system after I can collect some data, and you'll see two things. You're either going to have a low ACOS or you're going to have a high ACOS. So if you have a low ACOS, you want to increase the bid to reach your target ACOS. If you have a high ACOS, you're actually going to decrease bid to your target ACOS. So I'll go into an example here as we look into the data, but that's all bidding. That's all it takes for bidding. If you can perform this, you're probably going to have a pretty efficient PPC system. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. As long as you're doing this enough times, you're going to see performance on the PPC side. And then you have throttling. So that comes down to day parting, budget throttling, and placement throttling. So I would say placement throttling is more advanced. I probably won't go through that here. Budget throttling can be useful, so we'll revisit that. And then day parting doesn't necessarily apply too much to the search term analysis, but I just thought I'd throw that in there as that is one of the levers. So as you can see, there's not a ton of levers that you actually need to pull when you break it down to these three categories when you're trying to optimize your PPC. But as you can see, you're dealing with hundreds and thousands of different keywords across hundreds of products if that's how your product line is set up. Plus, if you're across multiple marketplaces, it even complicates it even further with currencies and their own set of keywords and so on. So first, we're going to jump into targeting strategies. So we're going to look at these two. And so there's certain things I look at. So once you have an aggregated data or a Google Sheet, for instance, of this data here, we're going to want to filter for orders equals 0. So in this case, I can't see any because I didn't pull it in, but generally you would have something that had orders equals 0 and then maybe clicks greater than 10, 15. And all of those search terms that you have identified, you want to apply a negative exact on it because you don't ever want it to show up. You probably spent a ton of money on it and it didn't generate you any orders. So get rid of them as quickly as you can. If you want to graduate, you just follow that same formula. You take orders greater than, say, for instance, 2. And then I like to have a minimum click. So you can add like 3, 4, 5, whatever makes you feel that you didn't get those 2 clicks by fluke. From there, you want to then make sure that you graduate all of these search terms across all of those match types up here and perform search term isolation. Again, another reason why I am on board to automate all of this, because doing this manually, it's really easy to make a mistake. But if you have rules kind of set up, you can perform this over and over again. Next, we have bidding now. So we have inch-up bidding. So in this case, this one's kind of sorted by spend, I believe. Yeah. So it's sorted. Oh, no, not spend. It's sorted by sales. So in this case, I'm not going to see search terms here that have low data. But generally, you're looking for anything that have pretty low click volume. And you want to raise those bids up kind of slowly, because in the period that you've ran them for, they have only generated very little clicks. So that means it hasn't found that bottom yet. So let's just use this as an example. If it's at $1.10 and I only had like 1 click on it, and the next day I might optimize this to go from $1.10 to say $1.15. And let's just say at that point, I get 1 or 2 or 3 different clicks through. but I at least found the bottom where I got the click. So it's the cheapest amount of money that I would have paid for those few clicks that had no data. So that's what you would do on that subset of search terms or targets. And then from here, you have revenue-based bidding. Again, the one thing that I'm talking about here is this is a search term report. You're applying these to at the targeting level, right? Same thing here. So like you would use the search terms to figure out what you want to negative and what you want to apply the search term. At this level, this is at the targeting level. So just imagine that this is targets. And then so it's the same concept though. So you're basically setting the bids and you're trying to apply inch up as well as revenue-based bidding. So again, revenue-based bidding is that formula. It's revenue over click times target ACOS. So if you have a low ACOS, you increase the bid. If you have a high ACOS, you decrease the bid. So let's just say my target ACOS is 35%. So at this 40%, I'm going to want to drop it. Do the formula, take the sales divided by clicks times 35%, and that bid is going to drop. So whatever bid you're at, it's going to set that bid so that you try to reach 35%. And then this here, same thing, going to try to go down. This here is going to go up. This one's going to go up. And of course, if you set this up in a way where you can control different, because you're not going to blanket 35% across the board. It really depends on the strategy behind it and all that. So, but just for demonstration purposes, that's generally the goal of bidding. You're just trying to drive the ACOS into a specific direction or a target ACOS. And then throttling strategies. So again, we're not going to talk about day parting. We're just going to address budgeting and placement. But placement is, again, also a very higher level advanced strategy. So, but in terms of budgeting, let's just say these here you're at the campaign level because budgeting only exists at the campaign level. So if you're looking at your campaigns, and instead of these are search terms, you're still looking at the exact same data points. And let's just say you're analyzing this and you realize, wow, I'm spending a lot of money on, let me try to find something here. So say you had this one, right? You're running at a 60% ACOS. You're spending $800 on it. It's not performing very well. What you could do is, let's just say this was over 8 days. So you're spending a little bit over $100 a day on this. But let's just say I cap this then off at $50 a day. So at $50 a day, I'm now going to be at $400 for this time period, for those 8 days. So if you spend $400 and it still performs at 60%, you essentially reduced your overall account spend. Even though the ACOS here may show at 60%, your total ACOS, when this all gets summed up at the very bottom, should improve and be better. And that's generally the gist of basically any whole PPC analysis, not just specifically search terms, but how to create a PPC system that's pretty simple, straightforward, and you just have to kind of do this at scale, which again, I then point to really trying to get into automation and automate as much of this as you possibly can, because this stuff can get really, really overwhelming over time. So I hope that helps. If you like this, see you in the next one.